Hi. Before I carry on talking about where I'm trying to get to, I think it's important that we go back and explain how I got here in the first place. Because if you watch the first couple of episodes, you'll know the goal is 500k before retirement. But the truth is, I've already achieved one of my greatest goals I ever had. If you're new here, I'm Matt. This is Road to Freedom. I'm documenting how I'm going to build another 500k for retirement while trying to balance building tomorrow while living today. But before I talk about the future, I think it's only fair that I explain how I got to where I am now. So let's get it. All right, so we'll start off younger school years. I was a distracted child. I was not a naughty kid or anything like that, but maybe slightly distracted, couldn't really concentrate in school. I was told I had mild dyslexia. Um, Never a stupid kid or anything like that. Not that dyslexia is stupid, but um, like I had something about me. It just didn't lend itself to school, basically. I'd fit in generally in school. I had little deals that I'd do. It was kind of an opportunist. People would call me, people would be like, oh, you're a young entrepreneur. I'd do things like buy sherbet sticks. They used to be like 1p, little 1p sherbet sticks. I'd take them to school and sell them for like 5p. I remember another time I had these metal BBs that my dad had that his company made lottery number choosers from. So the silver balls and black balls would choose your numbers. And he had a bag full of these BBs. Um, so I had those, and for some reason, kids wanted to buy those, so I'd sell those. So I always had like some kind of opportunist need or want to try and make myself some money. Um, Going on from there, I'd have a paper round as a kid. Final GCSE year, I managed to get a job building computers for a company that made the taxi boxes. Basically, back when GPS and everything was starting to come in, this guy started a company where he'd make the GPS and sell it to the taxi firms, and they could send the jobs to different taxis. So yeah, I was basically brought in to build the computers, put them all together, and put the software on for that. I'd got into it because I think before that, as a kid, I'd built my own computer about age 14. I was always into computers because we always had one in our household, and a bit of influence from my brother as well because he did the same thing. Uh, so yeah, that's kind of how I landed that job at 15. Well paid as well. I think it was like £5 an hour, which was a decent amount back then. But at GCSE year, I basically got to the point where I was done with school. I didn't want to. I didn't want to do anymore. Like it just wasn't me. It didn't fit me. Like the way that they teach kids in school just doesn't lend itself to every type of child. And I just wanted out. 16, I could leave, so I was like, I'm done. Um, so yeah, I left school uh, after GCSEs. I quit that job because I just wanted to hang around with friends. That was the GCSE year summer, like the longest summer holiday of your life at that point, or how it feels as a kid. We're just hanging around with friends, living life, being free. I had a little 50cc Yamaha DT50. I'd just be buzzing around on that from the money I still had from my job. Absolutely love life. The freedom that gave me was something else. But it got to near the end of that summer holidays, and other kids knew what they were doing, had ideas of where they wanted to go in their life and so on. And I just didn't have any direction. My friend at the time turned around and said, why don't you get a job? You go get a job, start working. And he pointed out this job in the paper for Burger King. And I was like, I don't want to work at Burger King. I thought about it for a few days. They all went off, started college, so on, sixth form. So I applied for this job, did the interview, got it. They loved me, wanted me to do it. So I got in and I loved it. I'd work there, saving up all my money for my driving license and car. So I just worked and worked. I was happy to be there at that age. When you get your first job, it's not like a lot of people get to where they're like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to work. You just love it at that point. And yeah, I'd be there, end up being there for 2, 3 years. I bought my car and I'd put subs and amps in it. And after a little while, someone walked in to the restaurant. They sat down with their family. And yeah, this was one of my friends, who would be one of my friends. He'd just moved from outside the area. His family lived in the area. And he basically applied for a job, started working there. We were like best friends, inseparable. We'd go out in the car, driving around with the tunes blaring, having a laugh. And then one day his family came back in, and I remember Lisa walking through the door with her family. I spotted her. This absolutely fit, absolute fitty. The first thing I noticed was typical younger kid. I think I was 17 or 8, yeah, 17-ish. Just noticed the big. And I think I turned around and said to the guy I was working with, that's the one. That's the one. Anyway, I got introduced by my best friend. That was his sister. We went around the back, and he wanted to date her friend. And so he said, well, do you two want to get together? So I asked her, and she said, yeah. I think probably all the words we'd even spoken to each other at that point. And then, yeah, we were together all the time. I'd drive around there, pick her up, go out for drives. I'd basically spend most of my time there. I'd leave work, go to her family's house. We'd watch movies. I'd stay overnight. It was basically my home. Never really went home. Um, Absolutely fell for this woman. Absolutely loved the hell out of her. So yeah, not long after that, she was pointing out some rings she liked. I don't think she meant her engagement, or maybe she did. I don't know. So anyway, I saved up, I think 2 weeks worth of money. It wasn't a whole lot, 400, 350, 400 quid. Quite a lot of the time for a kid that only had a job that paid, God knows, a couple hundred a week, if that was it. High hundreds, high 100-ish. And yeah, I bought this ring. I had this whole thing planned. My brother had said, oh yeah, I've won a cruise to France. It was basically a ferry to France with a beds. Go there one day, come back. So I planned it. I was like, yeah, I'm going to propose to her on top of this cruise ship, ferry. It's going to be beautiful. So I asked the parents, did all that, went on this cruise. And we went up to the top of the ship. There was a bar with an ashtray. I think we might have had a cigarette or something. And then said, oh, let's go outside. Let's go outside. And it was pitch black. It was pitch black at the time. I walked out. It's dark, cold, raining, but I'd already decided I was doing it. So I did it. I got bet half down on one knee. She might say that I didn't get down on one knee. I don't know. And yeah, I proposed. And she said yes. It was great. It sounds really romantic if you leave out the rain, the cold, and everything else. But it was romantic in its own way. Then what happened then? And I was still working at this job at the time, and like I said, I worked there for about 2 or 3 years. And I think I got made I got made redundant at one point. Place had run out of business. They weren't working properly. It wasn't working properly, and yeah, they had to shut down. So I was made redundant. Not long after that, I managed to get some more temporary work. It's because it's the only thing I could find, but I managed to get it and kind of bounced in and out of temporary work for a little while before I got a fairly permanent job. Um, uh, so we were obviously living happy, seeing each other all the time, always around each other while I was working. Started this job, and I remember one day Lisa's mum turned around and said, "You should get a place." I think that, well, I turned up to the house and they were looking in the free ads at the places to rent. And I was like, "What? We're moving out?" It was a bit of a shock to me, but I was like, "Yeah, okay." The mum was kind of pushing for it. I think Lisa was maybe 16 at the time, so pretty young. I would have been 17, 17-ish, something like that. And yeah, so started looking at flats. Found this one little studio place, and that was what we decided to go for. I didn't have enough money at the time. I basically just got a credit card, pulled the cash out the credit card, which is the worst thing you could bloody do, and paid this deposit and first month's rent on this studio, tiny studio flat, literally, the one in the living room's in the bedroom, the kitchen is a little box, and then there's a little walk-in wardrobe that leads to your shower room. But we loved it because it was ours. It was our first home, our first place that we had for ourselves, our own time. So this is meanwhile working this driving job, and I like the driving job. It was nice. I really liked the whole being able to be out on in a vehicle, doing what I need to do without people behind me. So I worked there for a while until my parents were trying to push me to get something more. So they were like, "You should do the primary apprenticeship. You should do this," because I was always pretty practical in school. Um, I did a engineering GMBQ in my GCSE year, and it was the one time in my school where I actually cared. I actually put my head in, and I enjoyed doing. So yeah, I decided I'd do this plumber apprenticeship, and I did want to. I got a placement guy from the area took me on as an apprentice, and I worked for him for a few months before, rather run up to when it started, before the college course started. It got to the point where I just couldn't work with him. I won't go into massive detail, but I just could not work for this guy. I wasn't someone that wasn't a hard worker. It wasn't to do with that. Um, I just couldn't work for this guy, and I handed him a resignation. I was like, "I can't work for you." Explained it. He was like, "Fair enough." And I remember going to college, turning up like, "Yeah, I'm going to do my college. I'll have to find a new one. Nothing. Have to find a new person to work for, but that's fine." And I turned up, and they said, "Well, who are you working for?" And I said, "No one." I left, and yeah, obviously that's not how apprenticeship works. So apprenticeship got cancelled. That was over. I'd quit my job because all eggs in the apprenticeship basket. At least I was working part time as well, but obviously not enough to pay for the studio flat, bills, rent, and whatnot. And then council bill popped up, and that was the last straw. We couldn't afford to stay there anymore. After a few months of living there, we basically posted the key through the door. We were scared because we were like, we signed a contract for a year and we can't pay it. So we literally chucked the key through the door and ran. Managed to find a house share. So we moved into this house share. One room was like 70 quid a week or something, all bills included. We lived there for a while. Lisa worked. I was in and out of work at the time. Couldn't really find myself any stability in life. I'd lost track, lost focus, just lost my whole mindset. Um, yeah, that kind of went on for a bit. We were doing that, but planning a wedding at the same time because Lisa wanted to get married. Um, and yeah, we managed to do it basically through a lot of help through family. Just had a nice cheap wedding. We had a church, we had a hall, a little buffet, a little music, and yeah, we did it. It's, it was really nice. It was lovely. We got great memories from that. Um, just before this, was when Lisa got pregnant. So I think the push was that we wanted to get married before the baby was born. So yeah, pregnant, chosen pregnancy, not ideal by any means. We were young, very young. Yeah, however old, she was 18, I was 19. Um, got married. Um, and then, yeah, obviously we needed to find a place because baby in a shared house just doesn't work. So I was working in and out of different jobs. We managed to get a place, a little flat of our own. And our first child was born. And literally the most amazing thing that happened, along with other things, but yeah, one of the most amazing things that's happened in our life. And it was beautiful because I was able to be there. Like a lot of parents or dads or mums don't always get to experience those really key stages, all those massive changes, like the love that you have for that human being that you'd created is epic beyond scale. I remember her being born, coming out, the tears in my eyes, and just staring at this girl like, wow, I've got to take care of you. And I'd be there all the time. I remember the first night I was shattered along with Lisa. My mum came round to watch the baby and we just knocked out. And then the second night, I remember the first night, her crying, and it didn't bother me. I was excited. I'd get up. I'd let my wife sleep. I'd get up, take the baby in the living room, and I'd put on music and just sing to her. I'd take her to the park, do all of that stuff. Like that first year or so was, I'm so happy that I got to experience that. Then around a year later, after she was born, wife got pregnant with a second. Again, I'd just been working on and off. We were just about affording things, but we were putting off purchases that we couldn't afford. We could afford the basics, but that was it. This is just me working at the time as well. So yeah, it really wasn't ideal. And Lisa got to the point where she needed more. We needed more out of life. We were living for bread money. We were making sure our baby had our needs, but we were living for the very, very much basics. It was not pretty in any respects. And she said, yeah, you need to sort it out. Can't keep going on like this. If you don't sort it out, you're gonna have to move out. And then that was that was one of the big points in my life where things really started to change. I had this drive again. I was like, I've got to provide. These are my family. They're relying on me. I need to provide for these people. I need to be a man, basically. I need to step up. So after that, I did. I went out to all the agencies. I'd knock on their doors and call them up every day. Like, have you got a job? Have you got a job? Have you got a job? Until they gave up, basically, because they were fed up of me hearing from me. So I landed this warehouse job, worked my ass and off in it, showed up every day early. And eventually they were like, yeah, after a few months, we need this guy. It was good. So if many people work, there's a lot of people that go to work and don't just do the minimum. But I wasn't that person at that point. I was trying to change my life. I was trying to create more purpose and direction in my life. So yeah, I got my full-time contract. I was happy. It's providing we're able to buy the things like the Hoover. Let's say a Hoover. We didn't have a Hoover, and I was able to buy all the little things that we'd been putting off, claw back some aspect of normal life. And it felt great. It felt great to have purpose. It felt great to be a provider again. In respects of, yeah, being able to actually provide beyond bread money and basic needs. Um, so I'd work, provide, come home, be with the kids. Um, I was just happy, and in the meantime, I'd gained such momentum and drive that I was gaining some of that old side of me back, where I'd find opportunities and extra money, like buying things, selling, car boot sales, just little things, And it was just my extra part of what made me feel more powerful as a man, as a provider. It just gave me that extra something. Then our second was born. I don't know if I said this or not, but our second was born, and then we moved because we wanted a house for us. So we managed to find a place to rent, a whole nice house in a not the nicest estate, not a nice estate, but it was a nice area of a not nice estate. So yeah, we moved it. It was lovely. It was a nice, quiet little street, to be fair. And it was a beautiful little house. We made it our own, as we always did. We always have these rough houses and decorate and make them look nice. And then yeah, our second child was, I think it was actually born in the flat, but then we moved very shortly after into the house, and everything was going well. Like yeah, as well as it could be, and considering and left school, and I was quite happy and content with the way life was at that point. This went on probably for a year, just plodding along, working, being a parent, living life. And then one day, I think I'd started working quite a bit and I was getting up early. And I remember waking up early one time. And I remember sitting up. So I'd get up at the edge of the bed and I'd pull my pants on, pull my shorts or trousers up. And I remember pulling my trousers up to about my thighs, halfway up my legs. And all of a sudden, I felt this intense cramp in my legs, like crazy cramp. It was like really severe, and it hit me so hard. And I laid back down thinking, what the hell? And it just was so intense. And I shouted I remember turning around or turning to the side, Lisa. And that's the last thing I remember until I came half to with the paramedics in the room. Lisa sat beside me on the bed crying, calling me, babe, babe. And I'd come to, but I wasn't with it. It's hard to explain this. So the first thing I remember is I had a paramedic beside me trying to stick the temperature thing in my ear, but I wasn't with it. And I kept like looking to the side, I kept like, what's going on? I didn't say anything. I was just looking. It was like I was outside myself. It's probably the best way to explain it. And I didn't remember the cramp before at that point. And eventually the paramedics were trying to take my temperature, and I was just constantly like, and they said, well, if you're not going to let us help you, then we'll leave. And they left. They left me there, Lisa crying on the bed. And eventually I came around enough and said, what's wrong, babe? Kind of like I'd been in a dream state, awake, and then I'd woken up from that dream state and been like, what the hell? What's going on? And I looked at Lisa and I was like, what's going on, babe? Why are you crying? It's all right. It's all right. And I jumped out of bed and instantly just collapsed on the floor. My legs just did not work. And I was like, at that point, I was like, well, this isn't right. So yeah, I ended up going to hospital. I think she called my mum. My mum came round. They got me to the hospital. Whether I can't remember, it was for an ambulance. Where they took me, and I think I was in hospital for a few days to a week. They sent me home. I was still not right. My legs didn't work. They were shaking and stuff. Like a week after, my mum was like, "No, you need to go back." All the while, my family come round asking what's going on. So they took me back to hospital, said, look, this isn't right. You need to look into this. You need to take care of him. So I was in hospital for another week and they couldn't explain it. I'd never had a seizure before, ever in my life. Like, they didn't know why. I did have loads of tests up. After that, they decided that yes, it was an epileptic seizure, but there was no explanation, basically. Apparently, everyone's entitled to one. But the problem was that the tremors and shakes in my leg, they actually ended up saying, well, that could have been a second seizure. So actually, after that, I ended up losing my license because, yeah, obviously epileptic seizures, they have to take your license. So that was hard. Obviously, I've been used to driving a car since 17. But I had loads of tests after that. They took me to Northampton College or wherever it was, and I was plugged in and tested and all sorts, but nothing. There was really never an explanation for it. So after, yeah, it was probably a month. I tried to go back to work afterwards, and I remember turning up at work, and I could barely stand there. Like, and eventually I was just like, I can't do this, and I ended up having another month off work, and eventually I went back. Um, and I was recovering enough. I still had this weird shaky leg, but not. It was more. They get you to do this test in the hospitals. Where was I? So yeah, I went back to work, and yeah, I'd lost my license, so I couldn't drive there anymore. I had to get a bike, so I was biking like 5 miles to work, 5 miles back. But I got back into it, like I'd started to rebuild, started to get everything back together. It was a struggle, but we were managing it. And I think about maybe a year after that was one of the other things that kind of had a big impact in our lives. Um, Again, we were back on track again. Like, the seizure happened, didn't really have any other issues. Maybe I don't know if I'd gained my license back and I was driving to work again at this point or what. But everything was going well. And I think I started doing the gardens around this time as well. So I was starting to build up a customer base, going around doing maintenances. So I was working 3 jobs at this point, or I call it 3 jobs. I was doing a lot of side hustling, still working the full-time job, was building the gardening business, and I was just chucking everything into that, really. Like, more tools, more this, more that. I was just chucking everything I could into that, because I think for me the gardening was an extra earner, but potentially a way out. Maybe I saw, because I never really liked working for people. Like, I did it. Like, when I turn up to work, I do my job, and had always done my job to the best of my ability, to the point where they would be asking, "Oh, how are you doing it so quick? We'll bring people in from other sites. You can train them because you're doing it 2, 3, 4 times faster than them. You're that X amount more productive." So, like, that's kind of the person I was. So with gardening, with this business that I was building, I felt like I was able to get back and earn more than I would working for somebody else, because of how hard I worked, basically. So anyway, I think, yeah, this is probably around the time I was really all in, waking up at 6 in the morning, in summer especially, waking up at 6 in the morning, doing little bits, going to work a full-time job, finishing work, going doing the gardens, coming home at like 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night. In the summer, obviously, when the light is still out. Um, and then one day, yeah, things took a turn for the worse, basically. A lot of things that took its toll on my wife. I think she struggled with me being her sole provider, her everything, her love of her life, from being so vulnerable at that period, and plus some childhood trauma. And she had a breakdown. I don't know. It was probably a few months later, and I remember, obviously, I'm working a lot this time, and I'm all of a sudden she's just on the sofa. I'm waking up in the morning, she's on the sofa, she's just crying. She's crying, not able to do anything. And I'm having to get the kids up, get them dressed, take them to school, go to work, basically balancing it all. And I was trying to help her get out of it, but I didn't fully understand it. I didn't really understand it. And not like, it was hard. Obviously, it was obviously hard for her. It's hard for me. I was trying to, just keep everything going. But I couldn't do enough for her. It got to the point where it was about, maybe I want to say like 2 weeks in, like 2 weeks solid of never ending on the sofa crying for her. And I couldn't do anything, and I was literally lost. Like, what do I do? And I just rang her parents and said, look, you need to come get your daughter. I can't help her. Yeah, that was a really hard point in my life, in our lives. Um, yeah, it was a really hard point in my lives, but our lives. But she did come out of it. She went. They took her away. They got her arrested. They got her arrested. Took her to the doctor. She got meds, and yeah, she was on them for a number of years. When we got past it, she found a way to manage it. Basically, I think she also had counselling. I think really the lot of that would have. I think there was a mix of reasons potentially why that happened. I think childhood things in her childhood definitely would have had a part to play. I think the seizure that I had, uh, obviously, you got to understand, we were together since teenagers, and we left home young, and I was literally her everything. And then I'd become this provider, and she relied on me for everything. And I think when that happened, it was like a shock, or whatever word you can put on it. It was like someone that you relied on wasn't able to take care of you anymore, and they needed this help. So I feel like, yeah, maybe that also had a part to play in it also. But she worked through it. So we kind of progressed on. We were again working back to some kind of normality, working, saving. And I'd always had this want and desire to buy and own my own house. I never thought it was achievable, not as a kid that left school at 16. Like, that's not something I'd even thought possible, but I decided I'd try and make it my goal. So I did. And I saved everything, home cooking food, not going out to restaurants, so on, putting every penny away, just saving and saving until eventually I'd saved up enough. Um, and at this point, I think we were pregnant with our third. So, yeah, we'd saved up enough. We'd found this house. It was actually in the same estate. So again, not the greatest estate, but it was right on the edge, and we were happy. It was a fixer upper. It definitely wasn't pretty. So we managed to buy our first house for save up deposit, put it down, made it happen. But before that, I remember my dad saying, well, why don't you save up a bit more money? Why don't you just put a bit more money away? And I was like, no, I've got this feeling it's the perfect time. It's like, I just feel like it's right now. I feel like the timing's perfect. And I was right. That gut feeling inside was perfect. Like, the house prices was historically at a pretty reasonable price, along with the fact that interest rates were historically low. The mortgage rate we ended up getting was like 1.49%. So yeah, obviously a lot of things just kind of worked out in that regards. A lot of hard work, saving, working, but things generally just kind of worked out, and we moved in. We made it our own, as we always did. fixed it up, put money into it, and all the while I'd got my first house, and it felt so amazing. And I was like, now I have to pay off the mortgage. And I knew that there was a massive power in overpayments. And like I say, a lot of why I own my house today came from, yes, hard work, but a lot of luck, a lot of just perfect timing. It, just like if someone had lived a similar life to me, or pretty much near identical, it still could have panned out very differently. I think myself very grateful for how things worked, because it could have been drastically different. But yeah, because of all that, our mortgage payments were like half of what someone was paying in rent. So I just chucked in overpayments. I was paying more than the amount we paid in monthly mortgage payments in overpayments every month, and I just ruthlessly did it. Lisa would try and balance me out because I was so tunnel vision to, right, got to do this. Don't buy this. Pay. And we did that for like 7 years, not continuously. Lisa was the reasoning that would break that cycle and say, we can afford a holiday, we go on a holiday, or we can afford this. But I was, I get very fixated on certain things, and I would just tunnel vision straight towards the goal. Obviously, I would have some balance, days out, walks with the kids, so on. But money wise, I really tried to intensify everything I could towards paying it off. And within 7 years, we got to the point where we decided we wanted to move. We wanted a nicer estate. We wanted to take our kids out of the area we lived in, just because it wasn't a great reputation place. It wasn't terrible, but it just wasn't the best at the same time. I also wanted a bigger garden, so we started looking for houses. And I think Lisa had started working part time at this point. I think she'd worked in certain areas of certain industries on and off for a little while, and she managed to get a job with her mum working in that part time. And I think I kind of pushed a little bit towards it because I thought she was still managing her anxiety and depression, but I thought, well, maybe if you've got something to focus on, then it will help you. So yeah, she did start working um, part time around that time, and or just before we'd got to that 7 year point, and we were looking at houses. And yeah, we found this house, and I was like, yeah, that's it. We're gonna buy it, put in our offer. Um, and yeah, once we'd basically moved in and cleared all of our debt. We'd found this house. It was a fixer upper. Needed a lot of work. 100-year-old house. Looked fine, but heating system needed reinstating. Electrics were pretty bad. And yeah, we just did what we always did and fixed it up. A lot harder, may I say, than previous properties. This was in a world of its own. Replacing joists and all sorts because of woodworm. It was a hell of it was and still is an ongoing project, but we're getting there. But yeah, that's kind of how we got to mortgage free, just for a lot of hard work, a lot of really focused saving, a lot of hard hard times, but um, also a lot of luck. I'm not trying to make it out as if I'm special. Luck has so much to do with it. I cannot reiterate that enough. So yeah, we moved into this house, and I think Lisa was working more and more while I was kind of balancing everything. And eventually, I think actually just before maybe just before we moved. Yeah, just before we moved, actually, probably a key part. I missed out of this. I'd basically, yeah, I would say it's probably a year or two before we moved out. A year or two before we moved to the house the second house we bought, or that moved from the house we sold to the new house we bought. A couple of years before that, um, I'd quit. I was thinking about it for a while, and I was building this gardening business up on the side of everything. And I got to the point where I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to quit, because Lisa was working part time. And I got to the point where I built this business enough and invested enough enough in it that I was like, right, I think I'm ready. I wasn't sure by any means. I was scared, and I planned it, like pre-planned it. I was like, next season, next spring, I'm going to leave. I had it in my resignation. They're like, yeah, yeah. And then it kept getting closer and closer. And it never felt real. Never felt real. And I was like, I don't know if I can do this, but I did it anyway. And it just worked. It just worked. And I basically, at that point, again, was achieving another goal. So I'd achieved my goal of buying a house. I'd achieved my goal of paying it off, or in different order. Before paying it off, I'd actually achieved my goal of being self-sufficient, self-employed, working for myself, earning my own money. And it gave me like so much more freedom. Um, Obviously, without getting to the point where I was close to paying off the mortgage, the overpayments, and that probably would have been a lot harder for me to go, yeah, let's make that leap. Hadn't paid off the mortgage at that point, but again, I was lucky that mortgage payments are low, so things might be tight in certain points, but we could have still possibly achieve it. So yeah, I was extremely lucky that I was able to take that step, and it was probably the best thing I've ever done in my life, because like I say, at that point, was able to live my life more on my terms. I could choose what jobs I do. If I wanted a late morning, I could not go out the house first thing. I could sit and have an extra cup of tea, take my kids to school. All the little things that like mean so much. That extra freedom. Um, so yeah, life was good at this point. Lisa was working. Eventually, after a few more years of living here, we were doing it all up and stuff. And I think I suggested, oh, I don't know if I suggested it or she started looking around, because she worked in quite a low paid area of her sector. And I said, oh, what else is out there? And she started looking into NHS jobs and started applying. I think the first or second job she applied for, she managed to get, and the pay was like so much better. Like, not amazing money, like, but still decent, still very respectable money, and a progression path that she could look forward to, because she is and has always been quite driven. And she's like me, like she's very work proud. She'd always go to work and do a good job. Um, so yeah, she kind of always put her head down, and people saw it, and that's how she kind of got into that job. And like I say, she was worth more than what she was at the previous job as well. So yeah, she started working, and I think it was good for her. It was good to have full time work, and I'd got to a point where I could make good money and balance school runs, cooking dinners, all of that stuff. And it was like beautiful. It was lovely. Everything worked. I guess in some respects, I felt bad that my wife was working full time and I was able to earn this money and balance everything. I think as a man, it felt like maybe I should, but then I also, on the other hand, felt like I'd earned it in an ignorant kind of ugly way. I think my mindset's progressed a lot of times through my life. Um, that probably wasn't the prettiest ideology I have ever had, or whatever, but it was, in all honesty, yeah. I wasn't like, you need to work or anything like that, but I felt like I'd earn it. And we could have made done without her working, but when she started working at that job, that's when things really did change. Um, things went from, yeah, we can afford to slowly sort stuff out and this and that, to having more holidays and having more freedom to spend money on different things. Um, and we did a bit of that, spent a little bits of money on luxuries or whatever, mostly for stuff around the house, really. And a car we bought, which was, yeah, one of those big ones. And I think I learned this through my whole life, but I especially learned how important freedom is to me. But because it gives me that extra time for things that really mean everything, just the school ones, the being there for your kids, the holidays and the memories you create as a family. Like that for me is everything. And I think for a long time I was hyper focused on pay this, save, put everything away. And I did that. That that part it was a necessity in certain periods of my life. But now I'm at a period of my life where I really value and understand the balance between, like I said before, saving for the future or things you need in life, and living to living for your memories and living for your life. So that's what this channel is about. Is now my mindset is right. How do I get me and my wife to a place where how do we get us to a place where we can retire at a decent age? So my idea is 60. I'd like to retire at 60, or at least part retire at 60. So yeah, my financial plan is this 500,000, this 500K is what that's about. Just to get me and my wife to that point. Not ever worry about money, maybe not have everything in the world, but be able to afford the things that matter, be able to have the memories with the family, the holidays, the experiences, and the adventures along the way. Lisa definitely had a big impact. She, like I say, she's my yin to my yang, or my yang to my yin, however you want to say it. She's definitely found a balance. I'm one side's crazy save. She's live for now. And that rubbed off over the years to the point where I'm in her state as much as mine. So yeah, that is my story. I'm hoping you liked it. So if I was unpacking that, I would, if I had to break this down and say one thing, I would say I did work hard. I didn't deserve I didn't deserve how my life turned out, in my opinion, so well, but it did. And I'm so grateful and happy and lucky that it did. Because, like I said before, a lot of life is time, and a lot of it is out of your hands. Some people can work their ass off and still not get there, but if you don't try, you don't even have a chance. So yeah, I worked hard, but luck has a lot to play. Timing. But at the same time, anyone can do it. If I did it, normal guy, didn't go to school, then other people can too. It's just a lot harder these days, I have to say. House prices and so on. I'm not naive. Cost of living alone is crazy. Just do your best though and live for now, more importantly. Thanks for watching, guys. Oh, and next episode is going to be my financial plan. Keep talking about this 500k. I do have a plan, and it's a solid plan. It will work. It works. It fits in with my balance and everything else. Ideally, I'd get there quicker. That's where all these other ideas are going to fit in. But I'll share with you my solid financial plan of continuous compounding investing over the next 20 years, which will get me to my goal of 500k ish and retiring at 60. So I hope you join me for that. Thanks a lot for watching, guys.